You're walking on marble streets, between medieval walls, beside water so clear you can count stones on the seabed. This could be Dubrovnik, same Adriatic, same ancient stone, same impossible blue. But you're 15 minutes across the Croatian border in Montenegro, where that waterfront dinner costs about half as much and 200 miles of coastline stretch ahead with a fraction of the crowds. This is one of Europe's last genuinely underpriced coastal countries, and the window is closing. Montenegro is small. You could drive the whole thing top to bottom in about 3 hours, but it compresses a startling amount into that distance. Walled medieval towns on the coast, the largest lake in southern Europe, and mountains in the north that feel closer to Switzerland than the Mediterranean. The last stop on this tour, a canyon deeper than anything else on the continent. But we're starting where most people start, at the water, in the Bay of Kotor. Kotor sits at the innermost point of the Bay of Kotor, a narrow inlet that winds between steep mountains, like a landlocked fjord. The Old Town is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, completely enclosed by stone fortifications that have stood since the 9th century, zigzagging up the mountainside behind the rooftops. Inside, the streets are barely shoulder-width in places. Small squares open up without warning. The main one, Trg Odaruja, holds a 12th century cathedral and a handful of cafes where espresso runs about €1.50. St. Tryphon's Cathedral, the oldest in town, charges €2 to enter and has a small treasury of medieval gold and silverwork on the upper floor. The Maritime Museum nearby, about €4, traces the centuries when Kotor was one of the Adriatic's key naval ports. The town is also famously full of cats. They sleep on every windowsill and doorstep, and there's a small cat museum behind the cathedral, €2 entry, proceeds going to local cat welfare. Kids tend to love it. One essential timing note, cruise ships dock here between roughly 9 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, and during those hours, the Old Town gets uncomfortably packed. Arrive at 7 or 8 and you'll have the marble lanes almost to yourself, a completely different experience, and the low morning light on the stone is worth the early alarm. From the Old Town's north gate, a stone path starts climbing immediately and doesn't stop for 1,350 steps. The hike up to the fortress of San Giovanni takes about 45 minutes at a steady pace, switchbacking up the mountainside with the bay opening wider beneath you at every turn. Halfway up, there's a small church, Our Lady of Remedy, where you can catch your breath and already see more of the bay than you'd get from any cafe terrace below. By the time you reach the fortress ruins at the top, the Bay of Kotor looks like a map of itself. The water impossibly blue between dark green slopes, the red rooftops of the town clustered far below. Entry costs €8. Go early before the heat builds, especially between June and September. Bring water, there's nothing to buy on the way up. Decent shoes help on the descent, which is easier on the lungs but harder on the knees. The whole round trip takes about 90 minutes, and the view at the top is the kind that makes you stand still for a while. Back at sea level, a 15-minute drive along the bay's edge, the road practically touching the water, brings you to Perast. This is a one-street town with 16 palaces, and that ratio says everything about its history. Perast was a wealthy Venetian seafaring outpost, and the Baroque architecture still shows it. Elegant stone facades lined up along the waterfront, most now housing small museums or holiday apartments. The real draw sits a few hundred meters offshore, Our Lady of the Rocks, a tiny man-made island topped with a white church. According to tradition, fishermen have been throwing stones into the water here since the 15th century to keep the island from disappearing beneath the waves. A boat ride takes 5 minutes and costs €5 return. Inside the church, the walls are covered in oil paintings and silver votive tablets, offerings from sailors grateful to have survived their voyages.
It's small, it's quietly affecting, and the ride out with mountains rising on every side is half the experience. From the bay, the road begins climbing through a series of hairpins called the Ladder of Kotor, 25 turns that lift you from sea level to about 900 meters. Pull over at the lookout points on the way up because the views back down to the water are staggering. In roughly 30 minutes, you reach the mountain village of Njeguši.
It's tiny, a handful of stone houses and family smokehouses, but this is where Montenegro's national food comes from. Njeguši pršut, a dry-cured beechwood smoked ham, is produced here in family operations that have been running for generations, and several of them welcome visitors. You sit at a wooden table, get a board of thinly sliced ham alongside young sheep's cheese, olives and bread, and pay 8 to 12 euros for more food than two people can reasonably finish. The ham has a subtle, sweet smokiness that doesn't exist anywhere else in the country. Pair it with a glass of local red wine and take your time. There's nothing else competing for your attention up here. Another 20 minutes of mountain road brings you to the peak of Mount Lovćen and the entrance to Lovćen National Park. The centerpiece is the Njegoš Mausoleum, built into the summit at 1,657 meters. You park, then climb 461 steps through a tunnel carved from bare rock to reach it. Inside, a massive granite statue of the poet-ruler Perast II Petrovich Njegoš sits beneath a gold mosaic ceiling. Monumental architecture in a place where you'd expect nothing but stone and wind. Step outside and the panorama opens in every direction. On a clear day, you can see Montenegro's coast, the mountains of Albania, and across the Adriatic towards Italy. Entry is €5. Combined with the Njeguši stop, this makes a half-day trip from the coast that covers food, history and a view that puts the whole country in perspective, and you'll be back at sea level in time for a late swim. Heading back down towards the Adriatic, about 40 minutes of winding road brings you to Budva, Montenegro's liveliest coastal town. Budva has a reputation as a party destination, and in July and August, the reputation is fair. The beaches fill, the bass gets loud, and the nightlife runs past dawn. But the old town, a compact peninsula of stone walls and terracotta roofs pushing out into the sea, is beautiful in any season. The Citadella at its tip charges €3.50 and offers views along the coast in both directions. Outside the walls, Magran Beach is a 10-minute walk along a carved coastal path, two connected coves with clean water and high cliffs. It fills by midday in peak summer, but stays surprisingly quiet in May, June or September. For an evening drink, the bars along Slavanska Obala Promenade serve Njeguši, the local lager, for about €2.50, and the sunset turning the old town walls orange from there is the kind of thing you end up watching without quite meaning to. 10 minutes south of Budva, the road curves around a headland, and there it is, Sveti Stefan. You've almost certainly seen the photograph, a tiny fortified island connected to the shore by a narrow causeway covered in terracotta rooftops. It's a 15th century fishing village converted into an Amman luxury resort, so unless you're a guest or have a restaurant booking, you can't walk onto the island itself, but you can swim right next to it. The public beach north of the causeway is free, and the island sits there in front of you like a painting someone left in the water. Even if you don't stop for a swim, the viewpoint above the road, an unmarked pull-off, gives you the full postcard angle, worth a 5-minute pause either way. We've covered the coast of Montenegro. Now the country starts to show a different face. Following the road south for about 90 minutes past the port city of Bar, the architecture shifts. Minarets appear, the cafe culture tilts Ottoman, and the language on the street starts mixing with Albanian. This is Ulcinj, Montenegro's southernmost city, sitting right on the border. The old town perches on a rocky promontory above the sea, and the narrow lanes inside feel almost North African. Layered stone, climbing steps, sudden views of open water.
Below, the town beach is popular with families, shallow, sandy, warm, but the real scale is at Velika Plaza, 13 kilometers of unbroken sand stretching south. In a country known for pebble beaches, this is the exception. Lounger and umbrella rental runs about €5 for the day. Walk far enough and you'll leave everyone behind. At the far end, the river island of Ada Bojana draws kitesurfers from across Europe. Reliable wind, flat water, and equipment rental around €40 a session. From Ulcinj, the road turns inland. About an hour north through olive groves and gentle hills brings you to Skadar Lake, which Montenegro shares with Albania. This is the largest lake in southern Europe, and it has a stillness the coast can't match. Wide water, soft green mountains, a sky that seems to go on twice as long. The small town of Vrpazar is the gateway, a bridge, a cluster of stone buildings, and a handful of boat operators along the water. A 2-hour boat tour runs about €15 to €20 and drifts through lily-covered channels, past crumbling fishing huts, into quiet coves where Dalmatian pelicans nest, one of the last breeding colonies in Europe. Kayaks rent for about €10 an hour, and the water is calm enough for beginners and children. What catches most visitors off guard is the wine. The surrounding Chermina hillsides produce Vranac, a dark, robust red nearly impossible to find outside Montenegro. A few family wineries near Vrpazar offer tastings for €5 to €10, and a glass of Vranac with a plate of lake-smoked carp on a shaded terrace is the kind of meal that costs almost nothing and stays with you for years. The final drive is the longest, about 3 hours north from Skadar Lake through progressively wilder terrain, but it leads to a Montenegro that looks nothing like the coast. The forests thicken, the air cools, and by the time you pull into the mountain town of Žabljak at 1,450 metres, the Adriatic feels like something you imagined. Durmitor National Park is UNESCO-listed and feels like an entirely different country. Pine forests, glacial lakes, limestone peaks rising past 2,500 metres. This has more in common with the Alps than anything you'd expect from a holiday destination in Europe. The easiest start is Black Lake, Cherno Jezero, a 30-minute walk from Žabljak through cool, shaded forest. A flat trail loops the shore in about an hour, and the water shifts between emerald and near black with the passing clouds. Cold but swimmable in summer. For something more ambitious, the hike to Bobatov Kuk, Durmitor's highest peak at 2,523 metres, is a full-day commitment from Sedel Pass. No technical climbing needed, just stamina and clear weather. And then there's the Tara River Canyon just north of the park. At 1,300 metres deep, it's the deepest canyon in Europe and second in the world only to the Grand Canyon. The Đurđevića Tara Bridge alone is worth the drive, a 5-arched span from the 1940s that curves across the void at a height that makes your stomach tighten just walking across it. Half-day rafting trips on the river below run €50 to €80 and cover rapids ranging from gentle to properly thrilling depending on water levels. If you'd rather look down than get wet, a zip line crosses the canyon near the bridge. €20, about 60 seconds of flight.
You'll remember every one of them. Montenegro is a country built on contrasts, the intimacy of Kotor's alleyways and the raw openness of Durmitor, the energy of Budva and the stillness of Skadar Lake, medieval walls and canyon depths, all compressed into a space smaller than Connecticut. It costs what it costs because the world hasn't quite caught up yet. The bay is there, the mountains are there, and the math still works in your favour. For now.
Like, if this was interesting, hit the subscribe for more and turn that notification bell on.